Hi, I'm Jodi-Anne. In this video, I'm going to go through the stages that commonly occur when we need to heal from painful beginnings or child abuse. So while every individual will go through their own healing experience, there are common healing stages, and people cycle through these stages, moving from one to the other and back again until they've released the past and can concentrate on their present and their future unhindered. So the first stage is acknowledging that abuse occurred, admitting it, coming out of denial, and realizing the impacts of it on you and your life. This requires you to deal with the emotions and memories that surface and to start to accept yourself and your reactions as normal. Even if you're finding it really, really hard, if you have gone through a very painful beginning and trauma, then it is normal to be a bit of an emotional wreck, to be struggling to cope with it all, to be grieving, to be angry, to be this, boiled up mix of emotions. You just have to be able to support yourself through it to heal. So part of the process is learning to trust yourself and your intuition and to look after yourself. Next, we have to make the decision to heal, to actually commit to it, to actually going into that darkness, to clear it out and let the light in. And so we have to choose hope over resignation and despair. We have to make an active commitment to change and to put aside other demands to allow the time to experience our emotions, think about the issues, and to get the necessary help and support. And yes, it takes time. Yes, you're going to need to have multiple appointments with a therapist or some kind of support to help you as you go through the process. There's no quick answers or quick fix. We need to allow the emotions to come up and cope with that and the impact of it on your day. And this is really hard because you might be feeling perfectly okay. You go to sleep, you have some horrible dreams that you remember some incidents or you have some trauma come up, and you wake up in the morning with your body in fight and flight or freeze because of what you've dreamt and experienced. Your body's literally releasing that trapped trauma. And you may have to get up and deal with the kids or go to work and try and have a normal day, even though you're going through all of this emotion, this pain, this trauma. And so we need to learn the skills to support ourselves as we go through this and as everything bubbles up to be looked at and to be worked through. And so having a good support network with others, with friends, with family, if you have access to that, or with a therapist and professionals is extremely beneficial. Another part of healing from trauma and painful beginnings is actually breaking the silence. So we come out of denial and we actually then own the fact that yes, our circumstances growing up were not the best. Our parents may not have meant to hurt us, but they may not have been able to meet our needs, and they may have been caught up in their own pain, their own addictions, their own problems that stopped them being present for us and being there the way that we needed them to be. And there may be very valid reasons why they were not able to be there, but you still have to own the fact of how you feel. And as a little one, you would have felt abandoned, alone, unheard, unseen, unsupported, all of these different things. And that has had an impact on your nervous system, on your body, on your conditioning, on your self-esteem, and those issues need to be worked through. It's not about, blaming parents or anyone else. It's not about anything like that at all. It's about healing so you find peace and happiness. And by breaking the silence, you actually start to shift some of the shame and guilt by acknowledging out loud that you may have been abused or neglected or abandoned, and it wasn't your fault. You were a beautiful, innocent child in difficult circumstances that led to the pain that you experienced. It wasn't your fault. And of course, you want to be careful about who you choose to tell and how much you want to share with them, and to not have expectations about how they're going to respond. Because if you go to your parents or family members to say that you have, this pain, these disappointments, these hurts, this anger from what you've experienced, they may not be able to hear it. If they haven't healed themselves, they may simply not be able to stand hearing what you want to say, because they will hear it as blaming them and they will feel bad about themselves. They're already struggling, which is why they weren't able to be present with you, or they've got addictions, etc. And so that's just like adding to the load that they have. And so, of course, if they don't have the knowledge, the skills, the capability to process their emotions and take responsibility, their automatic reaction is likely to be to push you away, or to actually, claim you're exaggerating, you're making it up, you're just being emotional, you're oversensitive. They're going to push it away because they don't know how to deal with it. And so you need to be careful about who you talk to and what you expect from them. The talking about it is not so much about making sure that others know. It's about you taking your power back and coming out of silence, coming out of shutdown, and actually speaking your truth. Because when you do that, you're placing responsibility where it belongs. You're recognizing that the abuse was the abuser's fault and not yours. You were not to blame, you were only a child. And even if you went along with it, you're not to blame, because you were a child. The abuser, the adult, had power over you. And as a child, you don't have all the information to decide objectively. And even in the case of sexual abuse, you're not to blame if your body was aroused, because it's a normal bodily response to physical touch. And if you had positive feelings of intimacy towards your abuser, again, not your fault. It's perfectly understandable and normal, because if that person was being nicer to you than others, or loving to you, or even if they're being manipulative and controlling, but that's the only actual affection that you're getting, because the others in your life aren't close or are distant, doing, whatever they're doing and not paying attention to you. If this person was paying attention to you more, of course, part of you was going to be attracted to that, was going to want that, because even if it is bad attention, at least it's attention. And that's what happens when kids turn into rebels and become the scapegoat for the family. They've given up trying to get affection in a positive way because it hasn't worked with, trying to be the good boy or girl, trying to, be an achiever or a sport athlete or whatever it is you think is going to get your attention from your parents. If that doesn't work, eventually kids give up and they rebel, because even if they're getting negative attention, as in being told off and being told that they're naughty and they're bad, etc., at least that's some attention. And that feels better than feeling completely alone, abandoned, and unloved. So any problems that arose within the family as a result of the abuse are not your fault. Even if the family broke up as a result of you coming forward and saying what had happened and an abusive parent leaving, not your fault. It's totally the responsibility of that adult for their behavior and for what they did. So it's an important part of the healing process to realize that you were a child, and no matter what it was that occurred, you were actually tricked. You might have been bribed with gifts. You might have been threatened, told it's a secret and you can't tell anyone because the others will get hurt. You may have been coerced in some way. So you were used and abused. You were a child taken advantage of. It was the adult involved's responsibility, not yours. But if you've survived, if you're still here today working through your stuff, you're strong and you're going to make it through. You just need to learn the skills to support yourself and to get the professional support that you need to move you through the process, to be able to feel and release all the pain and trauma from your body so that you can be happier and healthier in your life. So you can heal and you can create the life that you want. But it's going to take time. And you're going to have to work through painful emotions such as grief and sadness, anger and rage, a whole resentment, jealousy, a whole heap of emotions. But the grief will be quite strong. And I'm sorry to say that, but it will be. If you've gone through painful experiences, traumas as a child, you're going to have a lot of grief over what happened to you, about your loss of innocence and childhood, because a child that's gone through these pains, they armor up, they live in fight and flight and survival mode, in freeze sometimes if it's been extreme. You lose that spontaneity and innocence of being a beautiful child, just in awe of life and growth. And, you know, instead of being focused on playing and being with your friends and your toys like a normal child would be, if you've gone through trauma and abuse at home, if you're living in a situation of domestic violence, if you're living with poverty and starvation, neglect, abandonment, etc., your focus is going to be on what's going on around the house. You're looking out for danger, so on heightened awareness, vigilance. You're looking for when is the parent going to snap, when are they going to turn on you. You live with a different focus, and there's none of that innocence, playfulness, and joy that is there for a child that hasn't experienced these things. So children that go through this, they grow up way too fast because they can't become much older in their mindset than their physical age. And they have a loss of trust, because if your parent or family member or family friend, whoever it is that's being abusive and being dangerous and a threat, you learn that you can't trust them to look after you and to be there for you. And it makes it hard then to trust others. Because if the ones that are meant to love you the most aren't doing that, how can you trust someone else to? And so you end up with all these barriers and walls, these defenses about not letting people close. And so the grief around the fact that the relationships weren't the way that would have liked them to be can be massive. And then, of course, you're going to have the grief over the impact that this has had throughout your life. Because depending on what age you start to work on your healing journey, you may have had decades of living a pretty isolated and lonely life because you've been too scared to let people close. You might have been quite a strong, powerful, angry, somewhat passive-aggressive kind of person, because when someone does come in too close, your automatic defense mechanism might be to become strong and push them away. And so these are normal reactions if you've gone through childhood abuse or pain, neglect, abandonment, etc. But we have to work through them to heal those defense mechanisms, to let those walls and barriers down so that we can actually be close with people, so we can actually have good friends, to have our loved ones be with us and to have joy in life. And so as you work through this process, if it becomes too much and you start to get overwhelmed and depressed, get help to move through it. Seek help and support in whatever way feels right for you, and that might be a counsellor or a psychologist, psychiatrist, a therapist of some kind, a body worker to help calm your body. You might prefer to do self-study to start with if you don't feel safe enough to open up to a professional, but get the help to look after yourself. There's a wide range of free support lines, phone lines that you can call in to speak to someone, so that you've got that anonymity and your own private space, if that feels a safer way to start. There's lots of help out there. You just have to reach out to get it. So it takes time to feel all these feelings. You have to get that courage to actually talk to safe people about them and to feel and release the emotions. And the intensity will pass. You'll have moments where it's really, really strong, and then you'll calm back down, and then something else might surface, or you might have another trigger happen as a result of what you're experiencing during the day. And you'll go back up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. It is a roller coaster ride. But the more skills you have of how to support yourself, you can make it smoother and easier and make those roller coasters not so big. Okay, so another common phase that people have to work through is anger. For some of us, we have a rage inside of us. And they even describe it as a murderous rage. And most of us are spending so much of our energy squashing that down because we can feel that volcano inside us and the possibility of that coming out and actually being emotionally abusive, dangerous, and threatening to hurt others. And it's not that we want to do that, but the intensity of the pain is so strong that if we're not coping and someone does something that, is like the straw that breaks the camel's back, or that is one too many things, and you end up just going, blah, we can feel the strength of that energy. And so part of the healing process is learning to diffuse that energy, to let the steam out of that pressure cooker, to diffuse that bomb that is inside of us, so that we're not having to swallow it, which will cause damage inside us. That kind of buried anger and pain eventually leads to dis-ease. Our body's not at ease. Our body's in fight, flight, and freeze. Our body's focused on survival. When we're in survival, our immune system doesn't work properly. Our digestive system doesn't work properly. We end up with all of these problems because our body is focused on survival, which is blood flow going to the muscles so that we can run away, fight, or freeze and hide. Instead of it being relaxed and at ease, with the blood flow going to our digestive organs, going to our nervous system, to all the parts of us that actually would then focus on growth and healing. That doesn't happen if we're in a state of fight, flight, and freeze, because we're focused on survival and running away. Our body, our natural evolutionary process says it's more important for us to escape the danger than it is to actually digest our meal, or to get pregnant and have a baby. All of that stuff gets lowered, not necessarily shut down completely, but it gets lowered in importance and in functioning when our bodies are in fight, flight, and freeze. And so we can end up with all of these health problems as a result of living in that state for a long period of time, with chronic stress, chronic emotional load, and fatigue that comes from dealing with all of that. And so it really is important for us to learn how to process and release all of this so our bodies can actually start to function in healthier ways. Okay, so with the anger, we will have anger over what happened. As a part of the healing process, you can do role plays, you can write unsent letters, which is a letter that you don't send to the person. But you would actually write it and write, as a result of what you did, I felt this, this, and this, and it's had this impact on my life, and it's caused me these problems, and I'm so angry and hurt, blah, 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 blah. And so you get it out of your body onto the paper, or you can use art therapy. These are examples of drawings that I did as a part of my process to get that anger out of your body and released. You don't necessarily do this with the people that were actually involved in the situation. That would not be constructive. It might not go as well as you'd hope. They may respond with anger back if they're feeling threatened and attacked. So you do this in safe and constructive ways in the privacy of your own home, or in the office with your therapist, etc. And there's a whole range of tools and techniques you can use to release anger. And one of the things that I absolutely love now is a process called TRE, tension and trauma release exercises, where you can actually shake this fight, flight, and freeze energies out of your body without you necessarily having to talk about it. So it is actually the body's natural mechanism for releasing these trauma, stresses, tensions, and shaking it out, using up all of the adrenaline and the cortisol that gets released in the body with the fight and flight, so your body calms down. So you don't need to actually do this with the people involved. I can't stress that enough. You need to be making sure you're looking after yourself and doing what is safe for you. And as a part of this, as you heal, you'll drop through the anger, usually down into layers of grief. The anger is just a protection mechanism at the surface because it feels easier to feel the anger than it does to feel the overwhelming grief. Because often the grief is so strong and so overwhelming, it feels like you might collapse, like you might go into a black hole, like you might disappear, even not exist, because it's so strong. But you can support yourself through that and to heal in ways that make it as gentle as possible moving through. And as I say, TRE is fantastic for that, and it's one of the main tools that I use and that I teach others. Okay, so as you do release that anger and you start to move into accepting what has been and accepting yourself and your life, then the need for retaliation drops away, because you realize that even if your parents or family members or whoever it was that was abusive to you or was not there and didn't meet your needs, that it wasn't really deliberate and it wasn't personal at you. It was just their pain. They weren't coping. They had their own issues and problems. And even if they were being really mean and cruel, that was their pain lashing out. And often they're being that way because they were treated that way when they were little. And so it's like it's just repeated down the line. And again, this is part of what I look at with family constellations and intergenerational trauma. And so it's not about you. It wasn't about you. And even if they were picking on one of your siblings, or they were nicer to one of your siblings, but they were cruel to you, again, even though it seemed like it was at you, that was their pain being extrapolated out because you might have reminded them of that person from the past. Or they can see in you how they felt as a child and they don't want to feel that, so they pick on you to try and push away those feelings. And so as we heal, we let go of that need for retaliation. We let go of fear of anger. So if we've had a rage-filled parent, very common with alcoholics and addicts, that they might be quite friendly and jovial until they snap, and then they come out with vicious anger and rage. As a child experiencing that volatility in a home and never knowing when it's going to happen next, you can end up with an extreme fear of anger and people being angry and of other people being abusive. And so as a part of that healing process, we often deny our own anger. We push it away because anger hasn't felt safe. And so part of the healing process is learning to actually let that anger in a healthy way be inside us. And this then enables us to set firm boundaries and to be able to say no when we want to say no, instead of people pleasing and giving in just to keep the peace because we don't want someone to get angry and upset with us. And so as we reclaim that healthy anger, it then starts to energize us and give us the drive, the motivation, the capability to move forward and to achieve in life. If you've been constantly pushing your anger away and pushing, all of those emotions away, you're not going to have the energy to drive, the stamina, the motivation to do what you want in life. So you can see how we end up with fatigue issues, which ultimately, if we are in shutdown and the frozen state for long enough, can turn into chronic fatigue. So the next stage, or these all intermeld together. It's not sort of chronological. You don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. You'll go back and forth between grief and anger, between the various stages, but you'll be constantly working through these issues that come up, whether it be the physical health issues, whether it be social issues and difficulty interacting with others, having the courage to go out and to play, even working out what you enjoy to have and do in life. Because if you were raised in a volatile home that was dangerous and threatening, where you didn't feel safe and looked after, your focus is so much on surviving that you didn't get a chance to work out what you enjoyed or to try different things and have fun and connect with people in fun, safe ways. And so part of the healing process is getting the courage to actually start to go and do things and to realize that they can be fun. Because if you haven't been able to do that as a child, it feels abnormal. It feels almost wrong to go out and to do things because you're so used to being wound up tight and defensive and protecting yourself that to relax and go through, to go do social things, whether that be, a sport or going to the museum or, going out socializing, etc., part of you stays on high alert, waiting for it to turn into something bad. Especially if that's been your experience. If you've had a addicted adult or an addicted parent that was your abuser, because they would have often, might have had parties and it all started out fun and good, but then they snap and it turns into, the violence. And so you learn not to relax during the part where it's fun and good because you expect that the violence is going to come because it did. And because that was your past experience and it's what you've associated, you then have difficulty to actually relax and go do fun things because you're still expecting that the dangers are just around the corner. And so as a part of the healing process, we have to decouple those and make it so that you can have fun and socialize and feel safe doing that. And that requires a lot of healing, a lot of work on our conditioning and our defense mechanisms, changing our subconscious beliefs so that we can relax and just enjoy life. So we have to work through unhelpful beliefs about ourself and our self-worth, about abuse and about life in general, so that we can actually then see the goodness that is out there for us to receive and to actually feel safe enough to let that in. And so we start to build our future, and that comes from accepting that the abuse happened and that it's a part of the past. Now, partly this is a conscious mental process of letting go of wishing that it was different. It wasn't, it was what it was. Part of this is healing the trauma, because when we are in moments of trauma, our body gets overwhelmed, our nervous system gets overwhelmed. And when that happens, the memory processing parts of our brains have a glitch. They falter in the overwhelm. And so the event that we've just experienced doesn't get processed like it normally would and transferred to long-term memory. It stays current as if it's happening now. And this is why, even though we might not have experienced a physical trauma for decades, we may still feel like it could occur at any moment because those memories from those experiences in childhood never got completed. The memory never got completed and transferred from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. And so as a part of our healing journey, we can use tools like TRE, like somatic experiencing, like hypnosis, a range of modalities to help inner child work, to recover those younger parts of us and take them out of that memory so that they know that that's completed. There's a whole range of techniques that we can use to complete that process. So in our body, it actually feels like that was the past. It's not now, it was the past. And then our bodies can relax and feel safe. We need to develop our own self-love, self-acceptance, and respect, self-respect, to realize that we've survived the best way that we could. And no matter what we've done, that was the only way we knew how to cope at the time with the skills and resources that we had available to us. And we acknowledge the wisdom and the strength that we've gained from surviving the abuse. So yes, we may have preferred life to have been different, but as a result of what you've been through, you will have developed some, dare I say it, gifts that you wouldn't have developed if you hadn't gone through it. So I know I've only had the career that I've had because of the fact that I was so angry about what I experienced as a child and so determined that I would not do those same things to any children that I got to have. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to have any yet, partly because I wanted to heal first, but partly because I was scared that I would continue the abuse through to the next generation. And so I felt it was more responsible for me not to have children than to actually risk that. And that was partly a selfish process because I knew that it would break my heart if I had a child and it went through the same pains. I was struggling so much to deal with my own pain that I thought that would be too much and I wouldn't be able to cope. And so I've missed out, so far at least, in having children because of what I've gone through. But the drive that I had, the determination that I had to help others, to help improve sustainability on the planet, all came because of my aggression, my judgment, my rejection of how my parents had behaved. And my parents are beautiful people that were just caught in their own issues and weren't able to be there for me in the way that I would have liked. And my rejection, my judgment, was very painful for them. And I'm sorry that I did that. But it was the way that I coped and found a way through. And that energy, that adrenaline, that cortisol, that fight that was within me led to what I've been able to do and has benefited many others from the help that I can then offer to others. And so, in a sense, my parents and what they put me through has helped all these other people. Because if I hadn't have gone through what I'd gone through, I wouldn't have become the person that I am. I wouldn't be doing the healing work that I'm doing with others. And so that's the gift that has come out of my experience. And for you, it may not be your career, but it might be that you're more loving and patient and compassionate with others because you know what it's like to have gone through the pain of being not heard or not cared for and supported. You might be a better parent because of what you went through and choosing to make sure that you don't do that to your children. There are so many things that may have come as a result of what you've experienced. So yes, it's extremely hard, but as we work through it, we get to see those gifts or those strengths that have resulted from it. And the more that we move forward, the more that we overcome the feelings of vulnerability and, the lack of confidence to actually move forward and do what we want. And so we need to take care of ourselves in different situations and to learn how to cope with fear when it comes up or triggers when they happen. And the online course that I'm developing on healing from painful beginnings and child abuse will teach all of those things to people because it is a skill set to learn. But you just learn to be able to look after yourself in ways that no matter what life brings you, you can support yourself and you can be there looking after yourself, not letting yourself be abused anymore, not letting yourself be taken advantage of, walked over, not being a doormat or a people pleaser, not being the opposite, not being, aggressive and pushing people away. You heal so that you can actually come to a place of softness and gentleness and be your true, authentic self. And as a part of that process, you do discover what it is you want to do in life, and you get the strength, the confidence, and the energy to be able to move forward and do that. So you become your own best friend. And as you do that, you start to be able to see the goodness all around you and to let it in. So these stages of healing from child abuse, I've summarized these from this journal article or this chapter from MacDonald, Lambie and Simmons. It was back in 1995. It's one of the textbooks that was given as a part of the counselling diploma that I did, and I just loved it as a summary of the issues. And so I've condensed that here to present to you today. The artwork is my own art from my healing journey when I was working with art therapy. And I hope that you've found this interesting and useful. If it has triggered you at all, if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, please take care of yourself. Please do whatever you need to do to balance up and to ground and center. If you need support, please call one of those helplines or book an appointment with your therapist or counsellor, psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever it is that's your safe person that you get assistance with. I am also available for appointments one-on-one, and I do group work, and in future we'll have the online course. But please look after yourself and do what you need to do to support yourself through this healing journey. Many blessings to you, and I hope and pray that your journey can be as smooth and as easy as possible. It's a lot of hard work to come back to find peace and happiness, but it's well worth it so that you can free yourself and enjoy your life for the rest of your life. Okay, many blessings. Bye for now.